What's up, Geminites? It's your boy Gem Mint. You've seen me do top 10 lists of my favorite omnibus, the best omnibus for new readers, and even omnibus whales, or hard to find out-of-print books. Today we're going to talk about the 10 worst omnibus in my collection. As you can see, there are more than 10 in this stack, and we'll get to that. But before we get started, if you want to buy omnibus that you like or that are good, check out our sponsor, cheapgraphicnovels.com, where you can get omnibus and absolute editions up to 50% off cover price, immaculate and fast shipping, great customer service, and they have a bargain bin with books up to 90% off retail. If you mention my name in the memo at checkout, your second order will have free shipping, so check out cheapgraphicnovels.com. Before we jump into the list, I do have some honorable mentions. So I was thinking about putting some of these on my list, but I found 10 that I thought were stronger candidates for the list. So I wanted to put compilation books in the honorable mentions. Books that just have a variety of books that don't necessarily go together. They don't tell a cohesive story. Sometimes it could be just an artist-led book like The Marvel Universe by Chris Claremont. Sometimes it could be this DC Rebirth, which just has, I think, the #1 issue from every Rebirth title. And they actually printed another one of these that just had a few more issues, which was like one of the first omnis that I ever passed on. What else do you have here? You have... Actually, I didn't mean to put the 52 omnibus here. You have stuff like the DC Villains Year, which just has all those Villains Year or Villains Month titles. They don't go together, so you're just getting 1 or 2 issues from each character. And like I said, it's just a compilation book. What else is in here? You have the Marvel Universe, or the Ultimate Marvel Universe, which has 4 issues from Spiderman, X-Men, Fantastic Four, and it's like a sampler. If I was able to tell my old self, or give my old self warning of what not to collect, it would definitely be these compilation books. So with that being said, let's jump into the list. So the first book or books on the list, I'm going to give it to the Muppets, man. Marvel published 2 Muppets omnibus, a regular one and a Muppet Babies one. I didn't want to give 2 slots just for Muppets, so we included these together. I picked these up at a time when I was finishing collecting every single omnibus. These were ones that I was like, I'm not going to ever get those. You don't need those. But they ended up being like $20 on eBay. So I was like, you know what? The completionist in me has to have it. And that's going to be a common theme during the rest of this list. But, you know, when I was first collecting, I was like, man, it's got the Marvel Omnibus logo on the spine. It belongs in the collection. I even did try to read these and do a review on them. They're just not for me. They're targeted more towards children. Definitely some of the worst omnis in my collection. Next up is going to be Frank Miller and Bill Sienkiewicz's Elektra Omnibus. Now this actually has a custom dust jacket because the original one doesn't have the same uniform look as the rest. I had just got done reading Frank Miller's Daredevil and the companion omnibus, which I absolutely loved. I recommend them. They're great books. So I figured, hell yeah, let's jump into Elektra. Man, I could not get into this book. I think I read about 3/4 of it. I didn't like the artwork, although I like Bill Sienkiewicz's, but I just didn't like that painted look. It was very abstract. There were walls of text. It was almost like reading a novel, and I just couldn't get into the Elektra Omnibus whatsoever. What's funny is I think a lot of the books on this list are thinner omnis as well, but this was one of the first omnis that I tried to read and couldn't get through the whole thing. Next up, and it's funny because there's a few Spider-Man omnis on this list, and that's my favorite character growing up. Spider-Man's Tangled Web. I haven't heard of these books when it came out. The omnibus is the first time I ever heard of them, so I figured, hell yeah, let's pick up a Spider-Man omnibus. Couldn't get into these kind of one-off Elseworld stories. I think I read about half of this one. Some odd choices. I don't know why this was made an omnibus when we don't have stuff like Superior Spider-Man, or we don't even have like a Dan Slott multiple volume omnibus for Spider-Man. These Spider-Man stories I've never heard of, and I never care to look back at them again. Let's just jump into the other Spider-Man ones. Also within omnibus, Spider-Man or Superior Foes of Spider-Man. This is a Nick Spencer run that a lot of people were into. A lot of people like the idea of getting perspective from Spider-Man C and D list villains and kind of like living in this apartment together, struggling criminals that they know they're D-listers, and it's supposed to just be kind of a fun, quirky run. The main reason why I don't like this is kind of the same reason as why I didn't like Tangled Web. How is it that this omnibus was made, but Superior Spider-Man wasn't made? There are just so many other great Spider-Man stories that could have been put into omnibus form, and this is what we got. That always kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I didn't love the story. It's not really my favorite Spider-Man run. Would have much rather had Superior. Let's give Spider-Man a break for a little bit and give Batman some grief. Batman by Grant Morrison. I read and reviewed both of these. I enjoyed the first volume, but the second volume was where it really lost me. And if I think about the Grant Morrison run as a whole, it's just very confusing and difficult for newer readers. I wasn't reading this stuff along with every other title as they were coming out in singles, so to pick up the Omnis, you're going to be lost. There's a lot of stuff that happens off camera or in other runs that doesn't really get explained in this book, and it just ends up being super confusing. There is a third volume coming out of this, which I'll probably get for the completionist in me, but overall, I just wasn't digging this Batman run. We're going to jump over back to Spider-Man, and this is going to be the only omnibus in here that is not here because of the contents. The Miles Morales Spider-Man, the first volume, this is on the list because almost every single copy had binding issues, where the pages were separated from the spine. I've tried to glue it. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but it's not working. So I think it qualifies for one of the worst Omnis in my collection because it came damaged. All of them were damaged. And it does make it a little difficult to read. I still got through it, and I still enjoyed the story. But that damage just puts it on the list. Man, I think a lot of you guys knew this was coming. But I'm going to put the entire DC Golden Age, Silver Age, Bronze Age Omnibus on the list. Man, this was the collector in me, the completionist in me, that got sucked in because I do like having the Golden Age Batman and Superman omnibus. I think that's dope to have that history in the collection. But then they got me with a lot of titles like Adam Strange, all these Justice League titles. Green Lantern Silver Age is kind of dope. But I just wish I didn't get sucked in and get committed to this entire line because it's a lot of stuff that doesn't really interest me that I'm probably not going to read. And for that reason, these Omnis end up on the list. All right, next up. I know it's going to be crazy to have a Jeff Johns run on this list, but I'm putting the Flash on there for multiple reasons. First of all, I never liked how these were printed, where Volume 1 was super thin, then you had Volumes 2 and 3 were kind of your typical standard omnibus look. Not only that, but the mapping is off in this book, so much so that they're now reprinting these in a newer format where Volume 1 is thicker, and they fixed the mapping being the order of the issues. So, those two reasons, plus I did try reading this, and about halfway through I just couldn't get through it. I didn't like this run at all, and most people will tell you that it starts off kind of slow and you got to power through it. So I do plan on revisiting this, starting from scratch, and just dedicating myself to finish it, because I hear the run gets great, but there are those three things that put it on my list. Alright guys, I'm putting Conan on the list. Kind of the similar thing with the DC Bronze, Silver, Golden Age books. The collector in me got me here. You know, I have a complete collection of Marvel Omnibus, so I figured, man, I might as well get these Conans. The character just doesn't interest me. He's before my time. This era of comics, like this Conan, Bronze Age, wasn't for me. And then you have the Savage Sword of Conan, this black and white magazine format. I'm just not digging it. They're soliciting up to like 5-6 volumes of this stuff, so I'm like, man, do I get out now? Do I continue collecting these just for the collector in me with no intention to read it? More and more I'm leaning on thinning out the collection, getting rid of stuff that I would never read, and just keeping it with the stuff that I love. For that reason, Conan's on the list. And then lastly, for all the same reasons that Conan was here, I'm throwing on ShangChi, the Master of Kung Fu, and the Deadly Hands of Kung Fu on here. Not my era, before my time, not my genre. Got hooked in as the collector in me, wanting to have a complete collection here. I flipped through these, you know, it looks kind of cool, but I just have no interest in reading these. So I'm going to just pile these in as the last one on my list of the top 10 omnibus, or the top 10 worst omnibus of my collection. All right, guys, so that's the list. Top 10 worst omnibus of my collection. I know it ended up being a little bit different with kind of series of books or entire lines. Let me know, have you ever bought an omnibus that you didn't like? If so, drop the title down in the comments below. Like I said, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss a video of our daily videos or random live streams. And hit that like button. Thanks for watching. Stay minty fresh.